And now let's move on to our winner of the DevSecOps Leader of the Year award. Ladies and gentlemen, we present to you Mr. Arun Narayanaswamy from Amadeus Labs for winning this award. Arun, a very warm welcome. Please take it forward.
Hello, welcome to the session, and thank you, DevOps India Summit, for giving me or recognizing me for the DevOps Leader of the Year 2022. It's a pleasure, more so because it's been tough 2 years, and we've sort of shifted to a virtual hybrid kind of a scenario, and this is even more difficult for anyone to make an impact, and to get recognized in this is really an honor. To introduce myself, I'm Arun. I am a Senior Director of Engineering working for a company called Amadeus. Amadeus is a travel platform company which focuses on building products for the travel and hospitality industry. And we've been, and it's been a tough few years during the pandemic for in the travel industry as well, right? So having said that, what have I been doing? I've been involved in DevOps transformation, cloud transformation, and making impact to the organization, and while doing that, also helping people in that transformation journey. So this being said, what has been my journey? And that's very important for me to focus on. Obviously, been with organizations like Infosys, Walmart, primarily setting up the DevOps practice, Tesco, helping them in their journey of the cloud transformation, setting up the Cloud Center of Excellence. And obviously, at Amadeus, I sort of manage the DevSecOps platform, helping the developer experience, right? So I'll touch upon each of these because that's what helps foster the DevSecOps community as well. So primarily, what have we been doing as a leader? What have I been doing, and what have we been doing as Amadeus to help go through this transformation? Obviously, as everyone knows, DevOps is a very heavily people-centric transformation, right? So we're focused very heavily on looking at the challenges people see in this transformation. It's not just technology that we need to focus on, helping them evolve in this journey. What have we done, or what have I done? Been to focus on driving cultural changes, taking people along, help them evolve. And obviously, all this is not done just by saying, right? So we've focused very heavily on training. I've been part of the trainer. I've been a trainer. I've been involved in train the training kind of a session, mentoring people in how do they go attend a conference, how do they present, what kind of technology stories should they build, how do they create an impact or take these learnings, bring it back into the organization, and help create evangelists, help create or make them an evangelist first, and help more evangelists to be formed within the organization, right? So a very heavy focus on upskilling, creating workshops to enable these progresses and enabling people to transform. So this been a fairly, for the lack of words, fairly wide journey. It's driven heavily by saying, having said this, I mean, in the sense, it's easy to say we've done training, we've done mentoring, but what is it concretely done underneath, right? So one primary focus that I've been focusing on in the last few years, not just at Amadeus, but prior to that as well, is to help define what a DevSecOps career path is, right? And DevSecOps also has evolved. DevSecOps has evolved from DevOps, DevSecOps, Dev AI, SecOps, etc. What is a career path? So career path is, for a person coming in, is the aspect of saying, just if there is a person who is doing build deploy, can that person be retitled to a DevSecOps? Is the person who is doing pure play automation, is that a DevSecOps? Or really defining what a level 1 DevSecOps person is, and maybe to the level of what a director of individual contributor DevSecOps person is, right? So this career path definition is a path-breaking thing within the organization, because people have to evolve and transform and learn in that process. And when we do this, put a training plan at each and every level, help them grow in that career path, right? So it's not just saying, okay, you learn Terraform and you will become a DevSecOps expert. So that's been the focus when we are looking at people. Second, when we're looking at a process standpoint, very, very easily said, DevSecOps is not a top-down approach. It's a combination of a top-down and a bottom-up approach. So you have to, when you're doing that, there could be a direction which comes from the leadership to say you have to transform. But how do you take, being a middle management, being a senior management, how do you transform this into people? And how do you transform it back from whatever the people are giving, taking it back to the leadership and saying, what is the real impact to them, right? So, so the bit is very clear. We have to drive towards value. So at DevSecOps, in a product company, it's easier to put a value to a product, but how do you put a value to a DevSecOps team? So it's very heavily KPI driven. So setting up practices as a leadership, it is setting up practices for KPI driven initiatives of DevOps, right? So it's not just saying MTTR, increase deployment frequency, but it's also about looking at it from a product perspective and saying, okay, I have set up a DevSecOps practice, but is it helping move products to production in a faster pace, right? So when I say products to production, an idea gets generated within the organization, and how quickly are you able to take this idea to production? I mean, can the ideas be broken down to smaller pieces? Once the ideas are in production, what's the value is being driven? We measure CSAT scores or a customer satisfaction score. That's something that we have reversed. And we say, can a developer also have a customer satisfaction? If a DevOps team sees a developer as his customer, his or her customer, how can they take inputs from them and help evolve the DevOps practices, right? So, and one last bit when you're looking at processes in the DevOps journey is to look at accelerators, right? So accelerators are pretty simple. An organization is to be seen as multiple small startups, and each small division or each small company within a large company could be innovative, could be driving innovations at a fast pace. Take that as an example, use model or create models around it and build models or governance practices which others can consume very quickly. So this is more like when you're moving from an innovative curve of adoption to a mass migration adoption, you have to take the front runners and make that as an example and transform, right? And this is something which is really, really important in a DevOps journey. And last but not the least, which is the most important, is creating Evangelist and fostering collaboration, right? So in this aspect, what we have been doing is it's not just about saying, okay, a tool is deployed and you would be DevOps, right? Or a DevSecOps. It's to enable the end-to-end cultural transformation within the organization. So what do we do? So the bit that I mentioned earlier is creating small evangelist teams. You should use the same in a tools model where you are able to create tools in a federated fashion. So there is a governance team which manages just governance and policies, but give flexibility to people to modify, to implement, to make their own changes or bring or plug in innovations into it, right? So the more open your DevOps platform is, the more adoption it sees, right? And the bit that I sort of mentioned earlier, very important, is to treat developers as customers. So developers are customers, see what their problems are, try to solve it, put KPIs, SLIs, SLOs, whatever you want to call it, in a model where your developers are benefited at the end of the day, right? And one last bit that has been focused in recent times is building a marketplace model. So the DevOps should be fostering inner sourcing. So you should not be like, okay, this solution is only for this team. How can this team solution be planted to another team's solution, right? So that's something that we've been focusing on. And in all of this has been implemented in various products and solutions that I'm building for consumption within the organization. How do I take this and help foster the community, go speak in conferences, go embed yourself into universities where you're able to teach or give practice, share the practices of DevSecOps in the core or in the very early learning stages of people in a university, so that when they come out, they're not just developers, they have a view of what is happening in the industry, they have a view of what the extended DevSecOps ecosystem looks like. And then with all this being said, it's also about how quickly as a leader you're learning, you're implementing this. As a leader, you have to be learning throughout the journey. It's not only about you sharing information. And in that, I really appreciate the DevSecOps Summit, where they are sort of fostering learning across the industry. It's also fostering leaders to come and share their ideas, but obviously enables the networking aspect where you go there, learn and bring back the learnings, what various other organizations are going through, and bring it back into your own domain, your own industry, and your own set of practices, right? So this is very, very, very important for the DevOps community to foster and to implement or bring in more leaders. I would be happy if there are 100 different evangelists who would come up in the global ecosystem and talk about DevOps, which is something that we grossly miss in the India sort of Asia ecosystem, where we've not been able to front run or be the front running person in the leadership of the DevOps domain. And it's again, thank you DevOps Summit to have brought me in to be able to share my ideas, my learning with the others, and I'm hoping that I can learn from others as well. So thank you everyone. It's been a pleasure, and hope you have learned something from this session and you're going to implement some of these practices in your organization. Thank you so much.
With that, we come to the most successful cultural transformation DevSecOps and SRE award, and the runners-up in this category is Tata Consultancy Services. Let's see what TCS has to say about their project. Here we go.
Hello, Dhruba here speaking on behalf of Tata Consultancy Services Limited. And we are truly honored and excited to receive this award from DevOps Summit India 2022. And this award is in categories the most successful cultural transformation in DevSecOps and SRE. So today, we would not try to explain what DevSecOps is, rather would try to summarize our journey so far and what are we doing this differently to maximize DevSecOps benefits for our customers and to scale up adoption at organization level. We have around 3,000 plus DevSecOps projects which are going through, they are in different phases of their journey, and each project is a unique case study for us. Now, the juncture where it all began, it was the 2020, early 2020. We have just gone through the most successful agile transformation. It is the biggest ever. And from industry perspective, the DevSecOps was trending. The Gartner predicted that it would be mainstream within 2 to 5 years' time. And from our customer perspective, they were increasingly inquiring about TCS DevSecOps capabilities, and we are looking for direction and solution towards embracing DevOps and DevSecOps. And this is how our journey begins. As you know that we all experienced, we also had faced similar kind of challenges. Like when we look back to our organization, it was diverse implementation with varied degree of understanding. The understanding of DevSecOps core principles and practices is different from person to person, project to project. And that is what it was. The implementation was also is another varied degree of maturity. Mostly people were trying to reinventing the wheel, and experience and learning remains within the team. There were pockets of maturity, however, it was not cross-pollinated with other side of the organization. And more importantly, there was no assurance that this implementation would meet the DevSecOps end goals and the customer objectives for which the customers are being embarked upon. So we understood that a standard framework would be required to prescribe the TCS way of working towards maximize DevSecOps benefits for our customers. Now let us see what customer asks. So most of the customers are embarking on this DevOps and DevSecOps because of to gain the competitiveness. Now, if we see that for this to meet the competitiveness, it is the right feature to be deployed at the right speed, which is reliable, secure, and resilient against the load, scale, concurrency, other volatility, and the threats. We also need to be responsive towards different events, threats, and disasters. And at the end of the day, it has to be cost effective. So now it is not so easy that not to meet all these goals for the customers for which they are transforming into DevOps or DevSecOps. So now how to do this? Because if we know that give 100 projects to come up with these goals, meeting the customer's objectives, the solution of DevOps and DevSecOps would be different. And more importantly, there is no way to validate whether at the end of the day, they would be able to meet all these objectives or not. And finally, the customer would gain their competitiveness in the market or not. So that is how that we did it differently. We understood that there are different abilities which are very key and essential to meet the DevSecOps goals. And these abilities would depend on the kind of adoption maturity they have in terms of understanding and implementing the core principles, practices, and different dimensions like people, process, culture, and technology. So we have encapsulated it. We have very thoughtfully considered all of this, how to actually put together into a framework which will be deployed in the projects, and they would be showing and demonstrating this ability to meet the DevSecOps goals. This is how we started. Initially, we did a thorough industry research to come up with 200 plus framework elements, which has been extensively validated within our matured engagements to understand the deployability and implementability of it. And we came up with this TCS way of realizing the DevSecOps projects into a framework which consists of 5 domains, 20 plus practice areas, 40 plus themes, and 80 plus practices. Another part of this framework is that it covers not only the core principles, practices, and all dimensions of people, process, technology, culture. It also gives a kind of that how it should be implemented. So that is what the breadth and depth of implementation also. Mostly the depth is considered in terms of when in the pipeline or the process, DevSecOps process, it is executed, how much it is automated or manual, whether it is integrated with the pipeline or not, how much it has been left shifted, and whether the team has the ability to do this or they are dependent with different stakeholders to execute that. Because these all affects the adoption maturity and in terms of their ability to meet the DevSecOps goals. Now, if we see that most of these practice elements can be put together into an integrated value chain other than the domain one, that is the product conceptualization part, because the product conceptualization part is very intensive in the mature requirement engineering. Other than that, from continuous development to continuous monitoring, it can be integrated as a continuous value chain. And when it is automated, integrated as the value chain, it's an assembly line which actually draws the stakeholders near the product flow rather than product is going to the different stakeholders and waiting there. So this gives the much needed that flow of the pipeline and the speed, and all these practice elements are practiced at the right time during this value chain. So that is what we call it as an assembly line, and which is easily understandable and deployable from the practitioner's perspective. It has been orchestrated through an easy to use kind of feature-based tool integrated, the TCS cognitive delivery platform for different technologies to deliver continuous value to our customers. The next stage, we have all these elements, but whenever we try to kind of assess that, okay, where these projects are in terms of their adoption maturity, what practices are they following? Are they in the right way? based on the prescribed framework. So we started off doing this manually, but faced several challenges in terms of the varied degree of understanding, then the process, and mainly it is from the stakeholders' availability, the kind of standardization, and also the kind of cycle time it was taking around 4 to 6 times for these various assessments and give them the improvement or the maturity path. So whatever we found that in spite of having all this enablement, it is not a scalable model. We would not be able to cover the 3,000 projects to kind of guide and guide for adoption of the mature DevSecOps framework. It is neither scalable nor sustainable model. So then we looked back into our meta model, how to revise that, and then came up with this assessment framework. This assessment framework is the abstraction of the framework into an kind of self-assessed platform to give the practitioner understand and evaluate their as-is state at any point of time from anywhere, because it's a digitized thing, to understand their current or as-is adoption maturity and to chart out and get an automated improvement path. That is how it helped us, because anytime the projects can be onboarded themselves to see where they are and what are the paths forward for them to improve their maturity, and in turn to maximize the DevSecOps benefits for the customers and to reach their end goals. It has a kind of very in-depth coverage of the framework, covers definitely all core principles, practices, and the dimensions like people, process, technology, and culture. It has 500 plus response options to understand where exactly they are and how to and what is the path forward, that is their improvement journey path based on the different time horizons. It has an integrated knowledge base, so nothing is manual, it is automated, so that the way maybe know that they have completed that assessment, they will get the report. It would give them a kind of a very quantitative scoring in all our domains and subdomains, and also the various dimensions. So now if we see that, that how this framework or this the maturity part or the maturity ladder is structured, it is actually done after a kind of a various studies, like how people start and how they can know that move towards the maturity path. And as they move along the maturity path, all the cultural elements and automation, everything will come into place automatically. Like to give one example, like suppose people starts, if we take the infrastructure as a code, people know that normally starts with kind of doing it using a CLI or ARM template, or know that the manual way of provisioning this. Then we see that maybe know that they can do kind of automate the configurations part using Chef or Ansible. They can deploy the software or the applications using Ansible. And in the next phase, they can abstract the interface and the environment as an abstraction, like using a Terraform or something, where the entire infrastructure is abstracted. Now, if you see, once this is abstracted, it is a kind of a self-servicing mode. And so the collaboration happens from a team, or that IT ops or a department, where that the team can easily access and probably utilize that also. So once you move up the maturity ladder, the collaboration things comes happening. And in the next stage, they would be able to orchestrate an entire environment using automation and the tools. And at the last stage, probably they also would be able to do the automated rollback. So if you see that whenever people acquire that maturity in terms of conducting a risk mitigated deployments like Blue, Green, or Canary, it may not happen in a first day. So they will have to go through a kind of maturity path to attain that level, when that the entire infrastructure, provisioning, orchestration, everything can be automated. So they can conduct the Canary, the rolling updates across the servers, so everything. Similarly, if you see the testing, Some people do the testing at a n+1 sprints once, maybe that unit testing and other scripts are ready. They know the developer make the QA team understands. So that is one extreme. And another extreme, we have seen that the test design can start at the conceptualization stage. During the scenario analysis, they can capture the scenarios and start the test design and automation right at that time, so that before the sprint starts, even the test automation suite is ready. So for them, there is no system testing to run at all in the sprint, because from the day one, it is the regression, because they have already made that regression bed ready for even that sprint also. So that actually gives them lot of that speedway towards meeting that continuous delivery and the speed of the release. So similarly, as I was talking earlier, that the key abilities and how do they that impact the overall goals. Like we all know that to achieve that speed, the continuous delivery is one of the key ability. And now if we see that how to achieve that continuous delivery, it is the ability to continuously integrate, ability to continuously automate, integrate, and execute a test within sprints, and ability to provision infra the environment on demand. Now, if you expand the thread of continuous integration, you need to have ability to commit frequently from a developer's angle, which is also a cultural angle. And to do that, developer needs to work closer to the main line. They need to work on a smaller job set. And that takes us to the requirement engineering, where we do that epic and feature decomposition into the right side story. So if you see that everything is integrated as a piece, so if one fails, then the ability fails and we will not be able to meet the end goal. And apart from that, we all know that build success rate needs to be high. To do that, developers are recommended to do a kind of local build on the feature branch, so that they do not break the build on a CI path. And then also your pull request driven code review also has to be completed as fast as possible. So it should not be held up. So if you think that all these abilities would that give you the kind of edge you need to meet the speed and meet the competitiveness. So as we speak, 1,000 teams have already onboarded into this journey from 985 projects across 282 customer accounts. And they have came forward, they have benchmarked, they understood their as-is state and took that improvement path and working with customers to contextualize those findings and know that from the implementation perspective. And that is how our journey would continue, and we are continuing. So, and how we are that scaling up everything, apart from whatever we said, we have a strong network of practitioners called TCS neighborhoods, who are actually supporting this adoption and scaling DevSecOps at our organization level. Finally, thank you and have a great day ahead. Thank you.